I'm Dan, and today I'm going to be talking about online discourse communities. So, to understand online discourse communities, we first have to understand what a discourse community is. The Oxford Dictionary defines a discourse community as a group of people sharing a common and distinct mode of communication or discourse, especially within a particular domain of intellectual or social activity. A discourse community defines the language that we use to talk about certain fields. It is a setting or a group where the vocabulary that is being used is defined by a lingo particular to a certain field. Whether you are a doctor, a musician, or a writer, the terms and language that you use is going to be different depending on which field you're in. And discourse communities are vital to the Writing Center because the Writing Center is a discourse community itself. As Muriel Harris, former professor of English and director of the Writing Center at Purdue University, once said, tutors collaborate with writers in ways that facilitate the process of writers finding their own answers. To accomplish this, tutors may engage writers in discussions of their topics so that writers can develop their ideas and practice the phrasing and vocabulary of the kinds of discourses they will be writing. So now that we have an understanding of what a discourse community is, we need to understand what an online discourse community is. And as you might have guessed, an online discourse community is just a discourse community that resides on the internet. This would be any place where a group of people can have a discussion about a certain topic that communicates with language that is unique to that topic. Online discourse communities are one of the best ways in the current day and age to find new information and to immerse yourself into new fields. And this isn't really surprising for those of us who grew up with the internet because the whole purpose of it is that it's supposed to be a place where you could share all your information and find any sort of information that you want. I mean, if you want to learn to play guitar, you can have a video in front of you and teach you instantly. If you want to learn the latest fashion trends, it's just a click away. Or if you want to learn what on the earth Shakespeare is saying, just takes a quick search. The internet is a very powerful tool for the Writing Center because it means that neither the tutor or the writer have to know everything. Not only can a tutor use the internet and online discourse communities to look up information that they might not know, but they can also inform the writer of ways that they can do their own research. Ultimately, online discourse communities are very good at getting writers to engage in the field that they're writing in and help get them excited about a topic and learn language and terminologies that make that field unique and catalyze their learning in a certain field. So what are some good online discourse communities that you can use? And a good example of one that is very beneficial is actually YouTube. You can find information on YouTube about almost anything from any level from intro to expert, and you can even have discussions in the comments section about the information that the video was about and even talk to the creator of the video in some instances. Now, obviously, the YouTube comments section isn't the best resource in the world, but if you do find a good channel or a good community, you might be able to find some good discussion in the comments section that can actually be helpful for you. Another great resource for online discourse is Reddit. The great thing about Reddit is that it has a lot of communities that are specifically dedicated to certain fields or certain genres, as well as rules that for each forum that are dedicated to making sure that the discussion is good and that it stays on topic for what the goal of the community is. In terms of helping the Writing Center, Reddit also has just a general writing forum as well as forums dedicated to all different genres of writing, filled with people who are passionate about those genres. That being said, the Reddit does actually not have a community for the Writing Center, for writing centers, so that would be something that maybe someone could make that would be a great resource, I believe. The last resource that I wanted to mention is Quora.com. The great thing about Quora is that you are able to ask questions and post virtually any question that you want on almost anything that you want and get a number of replies that hopefully one of them will be the answer that you're looking for. The other great thing about Quora is that if you have a question, chances are that someone else has had this question as well. So you can search the question and see if it has been asked and answered before. So those are three great resources that you can use to find online discourse communities. However, the internet is obviously a very big place, and you're going to need to know how to find these discourse communities on your own. So there are a couple good parts that you're going to want to look for that make up a good discourse community. Firstly, you want to make sure that there is some sort of communication back and forth that can happen. That way you can actually have a discussion. You can have some sort of discourse about the topic where you can ask questions and have them answered and then possibly pose more questions. Secondly, You want to find a community that stratifies the information and the genres that are available. That way you can find specifically what you're looking for and have more specific discussions pertaining to what you want. Lastly, you want to make sure that there are some sort of rules in place for the discussion and ways that people can moderate the discussion. On Reddit, for example, there's moderators who can enforce the rules that have been set in place to make sure that discussion stays on topic. And on YouTube, the creator can take away certain comments that they feel aren't helpful to the discussion at all. Once you're able to find these communities, they can be a great resource for the Writing Center. As Eric Crump of the University of Missouri says, a growing worldwide web of computer-mediated communication has created new opportunities to learn from each other in a relatively inexpensive environment. And I think it is important for everyone in the field to seek access to the networks that make such communities possible. One way that writing centers can use these discourse communities is for a tutor to just say to a writer, hey, I know this YouTube channel that talks a lot about this certain topic that's really interesting, or I know this community on Reddit that talks a lot about, writing or, nonfiction writing, or, oh, maybe you should put that on Quora. I think that might be a really interesting question that someone could answer for you. Something like that. Or tutors can use online discourse communities during the sessions, which would look something like this. Excuse my stick figures here, but imagine that you're just having a nice working day in the Writing Center, just doing some work, and a student comes in and asks for help with their lab report. They don't know how to format it, and their teacher didn't really give them any instructions. Now, if you're anything like me, you haven't done a lab report since the 7th grade, and you don't really know how to format it. But you think that you might be able to find some answers on the internet through online discourse communities. So you have your laptop in front of you, and you check what the internet says. And you check online discourse communities, you do a couple Google searches, and you can't find anything that you think specifically pertains to what the student is doing. So then you might be able to ask the question in one of these discourse communities yourself. Pose the question to the members of that community and see if they can come up with any responses to it. So at that point, you can just let that question sit and do other work with the writer, read over the report, check the grammar of it, the tenses and all of that, and you just generally see what else they can do and have a normal session from that point. And then that way, with that question out there, you can check back at the end of the session and see if anyone in that community has responded to your question. At which point, most likely someone will have responded by the end of, however long the session is. And you can also, even after that, show and encourage the writer to use that community themselves to try and find some information in the future. The last thing that I want to talk about is what online discourse communities are and what they aren't. What they definitely aren't are places for 100% reliable, concrete, factual information. In fact, I would double check all of the factual information that you find on discourse communities because you can't be certain that it's correct. This goes for quotes as well. You don't want to search for quotes from a book you're reading or from a scholar that you're talking about on online discourse communities. Because as Quinton J. Schultz and Randall L. Bytwerk point out in a review of General Semantics, quotations ought not to be distributed without at least using search engines to determine if the validity of the quotation has been addressed by those who might have reason, knowledge, and resources to do so. It is a common trait of the internet to misquote people like Albert Einstein or other people like that and assign quotes to them that they didn't really say. So you have to be careful with that and all sorts of factual information that you find on those communities as well. The most important thing that online discourse communities are not are places where you can get people to write your papers for you. Obviously, getting someone to write your paper for you on something like essays.com is plagiarism and will be taken very seriously, but also you have to be careful that you're not using other people's ideas even unknowingly when you're on an online discourse community. So it's really important to make sure that once you see an idea or fact that you think would be useful, you need to search it and find an academic scholarly source that will corroborate that idea that you can quote as well. However, what online discourse communities definitely are great resources for writing centers to expand the community of the writing center beyond just the tutor and the student. It's a great way for them to branch out and get information from different people that they might not have just between the two of them. It's also a great resource for writers to get excited about writing and learn the vocabulary and the terms and concepts that go along with the practice of writing. The best thing about online communities is that the possibilities are completely endless. So if there's a community that you want to exist but doesn't, you can always just create it using one of the resources that I've mentioned or another one that you find. I hope that you can use these online discourse communities to facilitate your work in the Writing Center, as well as your own personal research into a field that might interest you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to be posting links in the description of this video for articles that pertain to discourse communities in the Writing Center and the internet in the Writing Center that I found really interesting. Thanks.